We all know Charlie Chaplin. Or, you know, we think we do. But what if I told you that beyond all the laughs, his films are like a startlingly clear X-ray, one that shows us the hidden fractures of the 20th century and, maybe even more chilling, a reflection of our own world today.
Right? When you think of Chaplin, this is the image that pops into your head. The little tramp with his funny walk and that signature mustache. He's the icon of silent comedy. It's a comfortable, easy picture.
But let's dig a little deeper. What if all that comedy was just a Trojan horse for a much, much darker message? What if, under all those layers of slapstick, Chaplin was actually creating a terrifying documentary about a world falling apart and diagnosing a sickness that we're still grappling with?
So that's what we're going to do. We're looking at Chaplin's modern X-ray. We're going to peer right beneath the surface of his films to see the hidden damage being done to the human spirit in a century of crisis.
And hey, this isn't just some modern take. A critic way back in the day, A.C. Ward, used this exact phrase, X-ray vision, to describe what Chaplin was doing. He saw it then, that Chaplin was showing everyone the hidden moral and psychological cracks that were forming in society.
And what a time to be filming. I mean, the early 20th century was just one crisis after another. You had the absolute horror of industrialized warfare in World War I, then the total economic collapse of the Great Depression, and then this terrifying rise of dictatorships all across Europe. This was the backdrop. This is the world Chaplin was pointing his camera at.
So let's start with Chaplin's first major diagnosis. It comes from his 1936 masterpiece, Modern Times. Here, he puts industrial capitalism right under the microscope, and what he finds is pretty disturbing. It was turning people into little more than cogs in a giant machine. The movie opens with maybe one of the most brilliant visual metaphors in all of cinema. First, we see the shot, a big herd of sheep, all packed together. And then he cuts immediately to this shot, a crowd of factory workers pouring out of the subway, moving in the exact same way. The comparison is just immediate, and it is brutal. There's no individuality, no personality. They're just a single mindless herd blindly following orders. It's this incredibly sharp critique of the industrial age, and honestly, a perfect visual for what Karl Marx called worker alienation. Before a single character even says a word, well, it's a silent film, he's already laid out his entire argument. And this idea just builds and builds, especially in the iconic assembly line scene. The tramp's job seems simple, right? Just tighten two bolts, over and over and over. But the machine sets the pace, forcing him into this frantic, inhuman rhythm. Now, the comedy here is genius, but it reveals something truly terrifying. Sure, it's a great satire of our obsession with efficiency. But look closer. The machine's rhythm is literally invading his body. His movements become involuntary twitches he can't control, even when he's off the clock. His body isn't his own anymore. It's been disciplined, controlled, and basically reprogrammed by the factory. And who's overseeing this whole dehumanizing process? The factory owner, of course. But he's not on the floor. No, he's in his plush office, watching his workers' every move on a massive video screen. I mean, talk about being ahead of your time. This is a shockingly accurate vision of modern surveillance. The worker is constantly being watched, always judged. It creates this constant fear that forces you to obey. It's this idea called the panopticon, and it feels so incredibly relevant in our digital age of emails and keystroke monitoring, but Chaplin absolutely nailed it decades ago. Okay, so if Modern Times put the factory under the X-ray, his next film, 1940's The Great Dictator, turned that lens on the entire state. And this was a huge deal because it was his first movie with sound. He was finally going to use his voice to make his most direct and most dangerous political statement ever. Chaplin does something absolutely brilliant here. He plays two roles, the fascist dictator Adenoid Hinkel, a not-so-subtle parody of Hitler, and a humble Jewish barber who just so happens to be his perfect double. It's genius because it shows the film's central point. The only thing separating the tyrant from his victim is circumstance, a costume. Power is completely arbitrary. And there's no better glimpse into the dictator's mind than this scene. All alone in his ridiculously large office, Heinkel begins this strange, delicate, almost ballet-like dance with a giant, inflatable globe of the world. This is it. This is the dictator's ultimate fantasy brought to life. The entire world, with its billions of people, is reduced to a simple toy for him to play with.
It's pathetic, really. It's childish. And then when the globe literally bursts in his hands, it's the perfect symbol for how fragile and ultimately self-destructive that kind of ego really is.
But here's the thing about Chaplin. He doesn't just show us the problem. He's not just a cynic. His films also offer an antidote. He shows us that even in a world that feels completely dominated by machines and monsters, there is always a source of hope. In modern times, that antidote is simple, basic human connection. The bond that forms between the tramp and the gamine, these two outcasts just trying to help each other survive, becomes its own quiet little rebellion against a system that wants them to be alone and powerless. But the most powerful antidote of all comes in The Great Dictator. For his entire world-famous career, Chaplin's tramp character was silent. It was his trademark. But at the very end of this film, through a classic case of mistaken identity, the humble barber is mistaken for the dictator, pushed in front of a microphone, and, for the first time, he speaks.
And he doesn't just speak. He unleashes one of the most passionate, powerful speeches in the history of cinema. It's a direct plea right through the screen to us, the audience, begging us to reject hate and intolerance and to fight for a better world. It is an absolutely astonishing moment.
So, okay, why does a film from 1940s still matter so much? Because Chaplin's X-ray didn't just capture the problems of his century, it turned out to be an enduring warning for ours too.
Think about it. All of his warnings are still right here, right now. Technology that threatens to make us less human. Political spectacle that's all style and no substance. The poison of hateful language used to divide us. But so is the antidote. The power of human connection. And the incredible courage of a single human voice speaking the truth.
And that really leaves us with one final thought, doesn't it? Chaplin used his camera to give us a crystal clear X-ray of the soul of his world. So if he were here today and he were to turn that same camera on our society, what do you think it would see?